All right, very quick one. Radio dispatch. Okay, so there's not really a good way to say this week's radio dispatch without sounding like a complete and utter joke. Um, I'm gonna be talking today about the superficiality of masturbation and lust in general. Um, Maybe this is good timing, maybe it's bad timing. I feel like since the 2000s all the way past the 2010s into now, then to now, from millennial on down to uh, Z, Alpha, whatever, I feel like we're just going down the sliding scale of like not caring over porn and stuff like that, and I think that might be a good thing. So originally, I have titled, I don't know if I have done it or not. It's called spiritual warfare and putting your pepino down. And I think about that just because like we have a whole economy, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for being in the West, where you can express, desire in a sense, like, okay, I get it. You could fairly critique the United States for just being like the personification of Las Vegas as a whole country, and that's kind of what we are. We sell music, we sell video games, we sell entertainment, and entertainment's just like a cool, diabolical waste of time that feels better than being actually productive or doing the stuff that you ought to do to make a good society. I'm not condemning it. I think you got to make the best run of being born into this world, no matter what. And this world has all that diabolical stuff. That's fine. I'm not telling you to dunk yourself in a lake naked and then come back up and swear things and like profess things. I'm not here to proselytize. Guy uses big words he doesn't understand. I know what I'm trying to say. Um, but even though even though this comes from failing yesterday, I wanted to talk about the superficiality and the time sink that is, and I don't know if I should be tasteful or tasteless, bashful or not bashful about it. It comes to use of porn and lust and desire and wanting all these beautiful chicks, or even an average looking one, just so long as she's touching you. Like, I think it's okay to feel that in a certain extent. But on the other extent, I'm here to point out just how shallow it is, and that can only come from a guy that used to be a very proficient gooner. A lot of times we do it as in terms of like a duty, and I feel like every now and then you might have to, just to blow off steam. Otherwise, you'll just have like romantic daydreams about all your female coworkers, and that helps no one. But at the same time, that could also just be an excuse to indulge in these very guilty pleasures that are kind of, for a guy at least, a waste of time. It is kind of a waste of time. Like, there's nothing necessarily denoting that you have to do it. It's just, it's so proliferating now. Proliferated? It's so available now that you're going to make up a bunch of excuses to do it. And honestly, I say this, as an older person, we really got to hand it to this digital age giving us so many options. Back then, you were kind of limited to print media, and as somebody that used to own dirty magazines, like, it's crazy to think how much mileage people back then had to get out of them, because there was no internet where you could just look up new stuff every day and just develop crazier kinks and stuff. You start off with BBW and then you end up with like incredibly skinny Cambodian, like, what are you gonna do? That's a joke, obviously, but like, I I think that now, being the generations that have had access to it for so long, I think after a while there's only so many body types and different scenarios that you can look at before you have to eventually look at how shallow it is. And there is spiritual warfare going on because this country looks to make a buck off of your desires, but there's nothing telling you to buy it. You know what I mean? Like, we have a million Nesquik commercials. There's nothing saying that you gotta go get the powder and mix it with your milk. There's nothing even saying that you gotta drink milk past a certain age, but we like to do both because we, as a country, exercise our freedom by indulging. And I'm not here to like condemn you or to tell you to never do it, but I am here to say is that it's shallow. Like, take it from me, how many times have you had post-nut clarity and then figured, okay, I shouldn't be doing this as much? Because honestly, it's such a time sink in the sense that it's just all hypothetical. Like, it's all made up. You know, that's like scenarios in your head that you're wishing were happening, and you could just... The biggest thing why I think that it's a waste of time is that in order to actually get chicks, you literally have to, like, not care about them. And I think that that's not terrible advice, but I think it's only made worse because of social media. Because we have social media, everybody feels the need to act even more unaffected because we're shown constantly through videos of fights, arguments, people going viral, that if we give them any kind of reaction, they'll use it on us and we will become a lolcow or a meme. Even though I challenge the fact that lolcows are proof that everybody's a loser now, because everybody has their own little gated community of what is their profile where they give their boring opinions and everything is final, and if they even don't like people, they can block them, which is something you can't do in real life, which is why I think the younger you go, all our ages down the line from old fuck to young person, there's like descending more and more glass cannon-y kind of, they're almost incapable of hearing anything that's not outright praise. And I think all of that is made worse by technology, which is why that advice, you know, I have to say all that just because I don't want you to think that I give you that advice without knowing that in the back of my head. And this is the result of social media, to have like a thorough explanation that you can't do on the socials because they're made to just, I don't know, poise people to argue or to get them to, like, there's not coherent thoughts that you could get out in terms of like a tweet. Maybe a Facebook post, but that's also why it fell out of favor. That being said, I think you need to enjoy right now your singleness, and I think you need to embrace the free time you have, because as much as I love women, and I've noticed from all the other people as well as in my own dealings with them that they're very, like, how do I put this in words? Very invasive. You know, once you let one into your life, okay, again, I hate to describe it as people as if they're animals, but like, once you let a person into your life, they're very, especially if they're more femme or feminine-esque, they kind of, you know, that's the equilibrium of our identities and what's supposed to be the healthy yin-yang of how one versus the other acts. They're very, like, invasive. That means all your stuff will start to revolve around their stuff, and if you're truly, like, founded on and respecting each other, like, you have to work out. It's work to work out not only seeing this person, but actually, like, you know, knowing their schedule and remembering their schedule, because a lot of us are in general stunted, so we're kind of not used to working around people that aren't just our immediate family, you know. And I'm saying all this just to say that, like, you know, you should budget your time the best, because you should, like, trying to be doing something else, because in all honesty, like, every sexy encounter I've ever had was when I was doing something completely else. And I think that'll be the worst thing, is when everything flips on his head, is when we'll finally be tired of all this run around and different examples or reasons, and the thing that'll make us most attractive will be the final straw that denotes our disinterest, you know. But as long as nobody gets hurt, I guess I can't complain. You know, that's just tough titties. That's just how it is, Yeah, and like I don't think there's gonna be some kind of vindictive, true like victory, but I am gonna say for everybody else who feels invisible, and just like anonymous gooner number 420, just because like nothing has presented itself. I feel finding something else to do is like the best. I know there's plenty of other videos saying that like if you have time to focus on the love you don't have, usually that means because you don't have anything else to do, yada yada yada. But I'm not even going to focus on that. As I said, this whole video is on how cheap it is to just do that. You know what I mean? It's like the monkey part of our brain being hacked. And because you're smarter than one, you don't have to do it, Once you have one in your life, it is very... okay, I'm describing, people as objects. I'm not trying to do that. But I'm telling you that having a significant other is very time consuming, because I can only speak for cishet, for women, but like once they come into your life, everything's kind of about them, and that's part of feminine nature. Other parts of it should be pushed back on, but that's another topic, another day. Anyway, like the freedom you have now and the anguish you feel, because let me just get that joke out of the way. There's a huge difference between when a girl does it versus when a guy does it. When a girl does it, it's because she's time managing, and now she's not going to have to do some risky behavior and attempt some meetup. And when a guy does it, he's just sad that he has to do it instead of actually doing what. But like it's just it feels superficial. A lot of times they are saying that people are looking for something more, even though they settle for less. That's why women are like, I'm looking for connection, and then they settle for getting like pumped. And then guys as well is like, I'm looking for third base, but what you really want is like someone to hold you, and all that stuff happens after third base, So like we set out to look for things, but we can't seem to find what we're looking for, in a sense, which only reinforces how dumb, shallow, and a waste of time it is. So like this isn't some return with a V super trad video where I tell you to do the cool thing just because things are so messed up that we're looking for something to believe in. But this is the one to remind you that if you were gonna do that, at least consider not doing that, or at least try not to do it so much. Honestly, this kind of situation only affects people that don't have anything to do. It's a privilege, in a sense, to be a neat or a gooner, because that means somebody in your life has provided for you to the point where you don't have the economic burden of having to hustle for food and whatnot. And I think that's the unique challenge that we have now, is that starvation, skinny poor people is no longer a thing. You can be poor and fat just because you don't want to go outside and all you eat is chips. And I would understand that. I'm not saying it's like super okay, but going back to what I was saying, like, again, it's a privilege to not have anything to do other than that, but I don't think you should use how messed up things are as an excuse to only do this or to not do anything. Because, again, if you think about it, people lived through the Great Depression and they didn't just give up and look at dirty cartoons all day. They had to do something. And I don't think you should use this as an excuse to not do anything. Like, you could always be contributing to others or helping out, or in general just doing something for yourself, something more than just cheap dopamine thrill cycle, whatever. Like, think about it. If people in Jamaica find a way to want to live despite multiple recessions in that country, like, I'm not going to say it was always poor, but I'm certainly not going to say that it was ever rich for a long period of time, if that makes sense. And if even they find a reason to keep going and not doing that, like if it's not a nation of just hopeless gooners, then there's maybe hope for you. Anyway, there's a joke there that the nation of helpless gooners is India or Pakistan, but my heart sincerely goes out to them. I mean, yeah, like, honestly, again, it's like a privilege to do that, and like ironically doing that is good for blowing off steam. And I'm not here to tell you that you should police your desires just in the effort of women, but I am here to tell you that technically speaking, acting unaffected and doing that less is like a net positive for you. I don't like to use it as an excuse that that's why people aren't going out and meeting people is just because they're gooning their desire away. I think I've been reading articles like that since the mid 2000s, like 2005, and I still think it's BS. I thought it was BS then. I still think it is now, but I'm here. Hey man, leave your pepino alone. I am telling you to try and do something more productive. I am telling you that you don't necessarily have to do this, and you don't have to just feed into like this because everything. I understand why we do it because I did it for a while before I got bored. I will say I got burned out before any of you because I had the early 2010s, and that was back when this whole thing felt like a playground. You know, I don't think we'll ever get that back. You had like the online chat sites, so you could get your cheap thrills there, and it felt kind of cool and scary to see strangers and like, you know, see each other. But now everything's so mercilessly paywalled or just so abundant that like it's not the same. Like that same sense of discovery and all that, it's just not there anymore. Which, you know, which is good. Again, like the whole point of this video, do something else more productive. And even if you fail, even if you're seeing this after coming down from the clarity post, that means at least next time you don't have to just compulsively, like, we're not apes, gorillas, or, you know, we don't just have to just jork it. And I'm not trying to like youth pastor, hat turned around, chair flipped backwards. So kids, you know, like that's not what I'm going for. I'm just telling you right now that while you are single, or at least not in the process of, that you should enjoy your time more wisely or differently. I mean, I'm not telling you not to do it, but I feel like if I inch any further away from what I just said, it'll just be like, oh, try not to, but do it anyway. And like, I feel like we have no discipline just because everything's at our fingertips. You know, there's no good enough answer now in the age of Google, because now we're trying to make a right and a wrong, when before it could just be, I read this book, okay, that's fine, let's agree to disagree. And now there isn't. There's just like endless wars of like, you have to agree with me, and like theatric debate. Again, it's just cheap because it's just different because of your place in the roles of society. You know, you're doing it because there's no substitute and you didn't get what you want. When the other side does it, they're just trying to scratch an itch that they know they could easily get. So, you know, it ain't easy being cheesy. It ain't easy being a guy. But at the same time, I'm telling you that it's again, I can only say it's cheap because it is. It's just cheap. It's desire and cheap thrill and all that. And I'm like, none of that is bad. I'm not here to demonize the male sex drive, as has often been done. I'm just saying that you don't necessarily have to do it, and that you should look at things, look at life like this, at least through this, like, consider this other lens of how things are, or could be. I'll say that as a guy, the only reason this itch is so hard to scratch and it's so prominent in your life is that this is the last thing that comes natural to you as a dude that modern technology hasn't really like taken away from you. It's like interaction, it's conquest. It's like the last thing that hasn't been automated yet, although all those freaky AI videos, which I will always find unethical. They're not for lack of trying, I guess. Um, that being said, again, there's other deeper connections to be made with people, and like, don't mistake the forest for the trees. I think for the longest time, us as guys were taught that the only way you can express your emotions is through this, because it makes sense. Everything else people say they want, but you'll be judged for, that's why the men complaining about the sad state of today are seen as whiny, because any man that they can't, any person even that doesn't come off as intimidating, people know that they can mess with. So what's the first thing they'll do? Oh, whiny. They'll call you everything, and then ironically that flies in the face of the side of politics that's supposed to be like, oh, you should let your feelings out, you should be able to open up more, and then they like pass all kinds of moral judgments to get the outcomes they want, and it's all contradictory. And I'm not here to just demonize you so that those kind of people can just say, yeah, like, there's a lot of dissatisfaction that it almost feels like people feel obligated to play these games just because, I'm not here to endorse any of that. I'm just here to tell you, you don't have to waste your time doing that. I don't know if that's a good place to end, or if I said anything profound. But that's going to be where I'm going to end it. You guys have a nice day.